Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Kawahara. I am the Executive Director of the UCLA Ziman Center for Real Estate. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining us for this webinar, Healthy Buildings and Healthy Homes. As stated in the description, the EPA estimates that the average American spends approximately 90% of their life indoors, and I suspect that's even more today. Yet little attention and research is focused on indoor air quality and its impact on health. However, both health professionals and those who design and develop our built environment are now focusing attention on this important intersection. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has only served to intensify this focus. This program is presented as part of the UCLA Ziman Center's Housing as Healthcare initiative. And we are also thrilled to be collaborating once again with Impact at Anderson. A special thank you goes out to my colleagues at the Ziman Center, Christina Green and Bhavna Sivanan at Impact at Anderson, who played pivotal roles in putting this program together. In terms of the format for this program, we'll include a short keynote presentation followed by a panel discussion with esteemed experts on the topic of healthy buildings and healthy homes. Our moderator is none other than Professor Maggie Delmas. Professor Delmas holds faculty appointments at both the UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability and the UCLA Anderson School of Management. She was recently appointed faculty director of Impact at Anderson. Her research interests lie primarily in the areas of business strategy, corporate sustainability, and socially responsible investing. We are excited for her to lead us through this program. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Maggie. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you so much, Tim, for kind of helping and putting together this amazing panel. I'm really thrilled to moderate it because I think it's a very important subject. You mentioned 90% of our lives indoor. I think we are now at 120% with this COVID thing. So yes, we know that buildings can make you sick. This can be because they don't insulate us well from external environmental factors such as pollution of a close by freeway, or recently we've seen this with the smokes of California fires. But it can be also because of the home structure itself, mold, lead, toxic materials such as arsenic used in construction. But it can also, and I think this is something we're going to talk a lot about today, because of our own behavior. When we cook without ventilation or when we clean our home with chemicals, these behaviors create indoor pollution. So all of these factors make our home unhealthy, potentially. But now, with advances in science and technology, experts have developed solutions to address these issues, and we know how to better design and maintain buildings so they help us stay healthy and productive. So the good news is that these buildings are better for the planet and for our health. They are green and healthy. So today we are very fortunate, thanks to the teamwork of the Ziman Center and the Center for Impact at Anderson, to have gathered the world leader experts in healthy buildings. Bill Hayward, Ben Stapleton, Angela Spangler, and Jennifer Bertolojelowick, whom I will introduce later. These leaders have been developing practices and designing standards to design and maintain healthy buildings. So in this panel, you will learn about the relations between health and buildings. What is a healthy building? How do you define it? What are the elements of building design that are important to protect our health? And what indoor behaviors keep us healthy? So you will learn what we can do to mitigate the negative impact of buildings on our health, both from a design perspective and from a behavior perspective. So you will learn what we can do when you live in a home. And this panel is addressed to all of us, users of buildings, spending 120% or more in indoor these days, but also to the real estate community of builders and architects. So first, we will hear from Bill Hayward, who will give the keynote of this event. Bill Hayward is the CEO of Hayward Lumber, a 100-year-old California lumber and building company. He's also the founder and CEO of Hayward's Core, a tool to help people assess the health of their home and then make improvements to make their home healthier. I've had the pleasure of knowing Bill for over 20 years. Bill has been a pioneer in sustainability. He was one of the first lumber company to use sustainable lumber certified by the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC. And Bill actually became chairman of the Forest Stewardship Council. Hayward Lumber was also the first lumber yard in the country to eliminate arsenic pressure-treated wood from its offerings in 2001. Therefore, thinking not only about the planet, but the health of those who work in the construction business and live in buildings. Bill was already so innovative at the time that we decided in 2004 to write a case study about his company with my colleague Erika Planbeck at Stanford University. In addition to our award-winning case, Bill has received many industry accolades. One of them is Dealer of the Year, an interesting award which I think might be misunderstood out of context. Another very important fact is that Bill is also a UCLA alum, so go Bruin. And we are very happy to have you back at UCLA, Bill, even only via Zoom. So please join me in welcoming Bill Hayward, who will tell us about his personal and business journey toward health and sustainability. So Bill, the floor is yours, and then we'll move to the panel, to the next stage of the event, talking about LEED and the Wellbuilding Standard.
Maggie, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for putting me on stage with everybody. As a UCLA alum, it's a special opportunity to get to speak there. I'm only sad that I'm not physically down there. So let me begin. I have a personal story that goes with the story of healthy housing, and it begins something like this. After, running a lumber company for 27 years, my wife and I bought a house. It was our dream house. It was in Pebble Beach, California, and we moved into it. And within a short period of moving in, we started to sneeze. We didn't feel good. We were exhausted. We were tired. Now, my wife is a doctor with 2 masters and a PhD in psychology. Nevertheless, we blamed it on the fact that we had a new baby because, hey, who's not tired when you have a new baby? But as winter approached, I couldn't hold a 10-digit phone number in my head long enough to dial it. I literally was falling asleep in meetings. I was asleep by 7 o'clock at night. And I remember saying, well, I am 45 now. Maybe maybe I just can't work like I used to. Time went on and we finally tested the house. My wife was no longer able to get pregnant. My daughter had green stuff coming out of her nose. And I was the point where I thought I had a brain injury and I could no longer think well enough to try to run my 100-year-old company during the recession. And I concluded that I probably needed to sell the business. We tested, and lo and behold, we found that there was a ton of mold in the house. There was mold mostly in the crawl space, interestingly enough. And the inspector said, well, don't worry about it. You don't live in the crawl space. But at the time, I knew enough about building science to know if it was in the crawl space, it was probably in my house. So we moved out, and suddenly we started to get healthy. And then I did some research, and I found that the EPA tells us that half the homes, schools, and buildings in America have an indoor air quality problem that's affecting our health. Well, I personally knew that. But wait a minute, I'm a housing insider, 27 years in and out of buildings, taking care of builders. How can builders and architects not know this? What's going on here? So I'm going to ask you all a question. And I warn you, you'll never think about your house again. When all the doors and windows are closed in your home, where does the air you breathe come from? Now, unfortunately, I can't do this live, but you would be saying things like, from the house. Yeah, but how's it get in the house? Well, leaks, cracks, crawl space, the dirty undercarriage of the house. You see, it works like this. Air's rising, we're warm, we heat, and it escapes like a hot air balloon out of the upper quadrant of the house. And it sucks replacement in from the lower area, crawl space, cracks, under the windows, doors. And it brings outdoor pollutants in, and lo and behold, they come in, but once they get in, they stay, so they generally concentrate 5 times higher, 3 to 5 times higher in the house. So if all the air we're breathing in the house is leaking in through unintentional damp, wet spaces, would that be fresh air? Not so much, and therein lies the problem. So, you've read a lot of stories about people being impacted in their house. It usually doesn't happen to a guy that runs a 4-generation lumber company, who, as Maggie said, chaired the FSC and one of the 20 most influential leaders in the building material industry, and my wife, with several degrees in psychology, who has the resources of a 100-year-old company to do something about it. So we set out to do something about it. And we developed the 5 principles of healthy home. You see, we realized there were really wonderful advanced systems like LEED and Living Building Challenge and WELL, but there was no K through 12 entry level to bring the average person who didn't know much about it to the table. So we built principles: continuous fresh air, properly sealed and insulated, less toxic materials, and cleanable surfaces. And later I'll talk about healthy home habits as the 5th principle that we added from Hayward's score. There. So I built a house then to the healthy home principles. And because I'm in the building material industry, we spent 2,000 hours testing all the building materials to make sure that they were the lowest possible off-gassing. And then we tested before we moved in. And we found that the off-gassing was low with ventilation on, because we had an advanced ventilation system in the house. And when you turn the ventilation off, the TVOCs, the total volatiles that you can measure, went up to 1,300 and would have continued to climb. Now, I can tell you that is a headache-creating environment. That is an unhealthy space to be in. But with an hour of turning the ventilation back on, we got down to really low levels. And with good ventilation, they remain below the WHO levels. So what does that mean? Those little arcs on the right, those are the levels that happen when you wake up in the morning, when the family moves around, when you kick dust up. With no ventilation, those would be very high spikes. With ventilation, they're low. So the power of ventilation reduces the total body burden in our houses. And that's a really important issue for creating a healthier indoor environment. Never mind the chemicals themselves. So how did this happen? How did we end up with housing with this much chemicals in it? We expect governments and watchdog groups to be paying attention. But on this issue, they have been asleep. And it's really left to private industry to create market demand for healthier homes and create market demand for construction companies and suppliers of building materials to build healthier products. So if we think about it, what happens in our house, our home, is it becomes a container of harm. It's full of all the building materials, chemicals of the building materials, outdoor pollutants, personal care items, cleaning supplies, a whole bunch of things. Oh my gosh, that sounds bad, right? Well, at this point, you're probably saying to yourself, well, it's all going to kill me, so I'm not that worried about it. You've given up your power. Fixing your home is infinitely actionable, and you can act on it easily by tightening it, by changing practices, and ventilating it. When you so do, it changes the whole environment. Why do I know that? Well, you mentioned my experience with FSC. Through FSC, I saw the power of consumer demand to transform 20% of the world's working force. So we created Hayward score in that model. Hayward score, if you go online and answer 50 questions, it goes through a set of algorithms, gives you a free report, tells you how to fix your house in the climate you're in. We've now scored almost 79,000 homes across America. We're the largest data set correlating self-reported symptoms and housing ever created. If there was doubt, because there wasn't enough studies, the studies were 100 houses, 200 houses. We have almost 80,000 homes and 23 medical symptoms. This picture is many moons ago, but it was a time when they believed that if you smoked a cigarette before climbing a mountain pass, you would climb better and faster and it would expand your lungs and you'd be healthier. It took 50 years for the truth to come out. Let's not let it take 50 years for the truth of housing to come out and create transformation. So I want to share this briefly. This is data from 45,000 health reports, self-reported. And you can see on the far right, upper right, scores of 75 and the percentage of time people report health symptoms. And on the far left, as houses get worse, a 39 to 11, it's almost 100% increase. Now, these are self-reported. It's a limited population, but it's the best study we've ever seen on the impact of housing. When I show it to doctors, they're stunned. And we even have the percentage of people who say these symptoms go away when they leave the house. Out of that data set, we created 12 steps to build healthier homes for new construction. We made that free, just like Hayward scored. And now Harvard has focused on this book called Healthy Buildings, which basically says your building manager has more to do with your long-term health than your doctor. We believe the same of the home, and housing and affordability can never be extricated again. So here we are. I learned this set of lessons. First, sustainability attracted 12% of the market. Then, through the power of consumer demand, we could transform global markets. And then health, wow, 60% of the market came to the table. So using the power of health, it turns out that if all homes were healthy, they'd become energy efficient. And that would solve 1/3 the global carbon footprint problem. And if all homes were healthy, according to our rough calculations, we'd save $700 billion a year in the US healthcare spend. Now we have a way to pay for it, and that's important. And if all homes were healthy, we'd curtail consumer demand for unhealthy chemicals, and that would be good. So whether you believe that there are too many plastics in the ocean, or climate change is happening, or too many chemicals in the environment, or topsoils being depleted too quickly, at least one of these we can agree. We must accelerate the pace of change. And on that note, we need an asset class big enough to move the planet. Well, it turns out housing has carried America out of every major recession and recently into a world recession. So housing's a big enough asset class. And so the simple idea that we can heal the planet by healing our housing is a powerful idea. When we combine that with the idea of sustainability, when business leaders grasp the compelling economic opportunities of sustainability, they can move more people and more resources than government and nonprofits can ever dream of. Now we have the power to heal the planet. And suddenly we have COVID. And COVID has made us remember forever what's on the elevator button and what's in our air. And the public health experts have weighed in on how to make homes healthy. And the environmental engineers have written the script. And as we get through COVID, we can then apply those to housing and transform health in America by transforming housing and thus heal the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Very powerful story of kind of how you can experience unhealthy building, but also of the relationship between health and the environment, the planet and the people. And so we're going to continue to kind of this discussion, moving on to some of the kind of the standards that are in development or that have been developed on both of these questions. So I'm going to introduce the panels, and then we're going to kind of hear from our leaders in the field. So thank you very much. So I'm going to start to introduce by order. We're going to first hear from Ben Stapleton. So Ben Stapleton is the Executive Director of the U.S. Green Building Council, and he's a veteran of green building. He was the Managing Director of the LA Los Angeles Better Building Challenge, which aimed at growing the number of energy efficient commercial buildings in Los Angeles. And we actually did an evaluation of the program with electricity data from about 180,000 commercial buildings. And it showed that the building in this program in LA Better Building Challenge performed 20% better than comparable buildings. So the question is how efficiency and sustainability can go hand in hand within the LEED buildings standards. And I think that Ben will be able to talk to us about that. So the LEED building that I think most of you know, which is really about kind of the environmental impact of buildings. Then we will hear about the WELL standard from Angela Spangler. Angela Spangler is the director of the commercial team at the International Wellbuilding Institute. She's also the lead for education, healthcare, and the government sector. So the WELL building, and she'll definitely talk to us a lot more about this, is a certification standard that certified the performance of buildings on health and well-being. And she will help us understand what the WELL standard is about and its benefits. And maybe it might help UCLA think about the standard for some of our buildings. We would love to have better, kind of healthier buildings here. Angela is also an accredited ergonomist. I think these days, where we Zooms for so long, we all need help from ergonomists. So it must be a booming business. The last but not least, Jennifer Bertolu-Jelovic is the president and CEO of Sustainable Production company, a woman-owned wellness consulting company. And Jennifer is a global expert in both the Wellbuilding Standard as well as the LEED standard. She has worked on more than 100 wellness building projects and loves to teach to people how to live healthy lives in the space they live. So she will provide us with the user perspective on the standards and help us better understand how it works. So you see, we really have like an amazing panel here. So we'll start with Ben, for 3 minutes, asking your perspective from the actually lead building standard. The floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Maggie. And I want to say thank you to Bill, who did a great job of really telling the story of his journey to discover more about healthy space. And I really think we're at a profound moment in our society overall, where people are becoming more aware of their environments they're in. Unfortunately, that's come from the COVID pandemic, but I do think that's one of the silver linings we can take from this is we have increased awareness. And, really building on Bill's point, more and more people are working from their homes right now. And I think we need to really think about what are our home environments like. I think companies need to think about their employees now working from home and, what environment are they working from now that they don't control that maybe be affecting their performance and their health. And I really think a huge part of this conversation is around equity. As Bill showed that those graphs with the different quartiles of buildings, this is an equity discussion also. I mean, the reality is that folks in under-resourced communities are living in places that were built with lower quality materials, are less well maintained. Indoor air quality is frequently as much as 5 times worse than outdoor air quality. And these are communities that are typically already dealing with more outside pollution. They're dealing with more emissions from vehicle traffic. And then they're in environments that are even worse for them. So I do think this is an equity issue. There's a surprisingly vast lack of data around indoor air quality, especially on a building level basis. So for us, that's something we've been trying to look at how to address for the region. So I'm the executive director for the U.S. Green Building Council Los Angeles. While we're affiliated with the National Green Building Council, our mission is different. We're really here to use the built environment as a leverage point to create a more sustainable region for all here in Southern California. We do that primarily through education and engagement. What does that mean? That means that we're always coming up with ideas, ways to be innovative to create either education opportunities through classes or training, or engagement opportunities where we can actually get into our communities and help move folks forward. And so one of the programs we came up with this last year is called the Healthy Building Alliance. And actually Jennifer helped us develop that. And kudos to you, Maggie, for getting her name right multiple times. I think it's the first time I've ever seen that happen. This is really a commitment to 5 principles around occupant health. It's not a certification, it's a commitment. And we really will help people in our region on their journey to achieve healthy space. And we wanted to make this something that was simple, that anyone from someone in their home to someone in their big office space could engage with. And our hope is it'll lead to more folks getting WELL certifications and other certifications as they learn more about the health of their environments around us. And when it comes to LEED, LEED is clearly the global standard. When it comes to green buildings, LEED is well known around the world for that. LEED has developed 6 pilot credits when it comes to providing healthy space and people looking at reentry post-COVID. And those align with a lot of the principles that WELL is using and others, because reality is those principles are the important ones. So that's around cleaning and disinfecting your space, looking at how you reenter your space from a process standpoint, how you're doing your health checks for people and what's your flow within your space. Looking at your building water systems, I know Jennifer and Angela will talk a little bit about that, but that's one that really goes under the radar typically that can present a lot of risk. Indoor air quality, I'm so happy to see people having more awareness right now around that, and sensor costs have finally gotten to a place where we can actually get better data. And then they've also created some interesting pilot credits really for communities. So looking at pandemic planning and really looking at social equity in terms of how they plan their communities. So LEED is evolving. But really, this is a conversation that we all need to be in, and every credentialing system plays a role to provide structure and give people the education to move forward. So for us here at UCLA, it's not about LEED or WELL. It's just about us doing everything we can to really advance our communities forward and create healthier spaces for people. And we've got a great panel here today, so kudos to you for putting it together.
Thank you very much, Ben. So now we will move to Angela, who is going to talk to us about the WELL standard.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to take a moment and just share my screen here to orient you all to well and where we are today. So building upon Ben's points, this moment truly has been a silver lining in that people are starting to recognize the value of healthier buildings. We're spending 100% of our time indoors, hopefully, and we are starting to see the impacts of things like air quality in the space, lighting, acoustics, all of these elements. You know, when you think about health and sustainability at scale, the health of our people and the health of our planet are linked. And so it's something that we really need to prioritize. So the Wellbuilding Standard has been in the market since 2014. The leading third-party certified opportunity for healthy buildings. Last year, we introduced a portfolio program, which will probably come up at some point in the discussion today, where leading organizations can use the feature set of the Wellbuilding Standard to start to track and implement healthier interventions over time. When in responding to the COVID pandemic and shifting the focus to what the market is really asking for in this moment, we've introduced a new Well Health Safety Rating, which I'll let Jennifer explain in a bit more detail. But just to give you a sense of the programs and the offerings in context, the largest and most robust and meaningful way to engage with the International Wellbuilding Institute is through that portfolio option, where you're tracking incremental improvements over time. The end goal of that program, or for individual buildings, whether it's your office, your child's school, your local airport, whatever it may be, could be to achieve WELL certification, to indicate that the policies that govern that space, the design that you're experiencing, and the way that the space is maintained and operated is being upheld to the highest standards. That's something that you could achieve through the Wellbuilding Standard. And then the health safety rating really focuses on the subset of features that respond to this global health pandemic that we're in. From a 10,000-foot view, the Wellbuilding Standard is based on a 10-concept framework that covers performance-driven metrics on site in categories like air quality, water quality, lighting, acoustics, the temperature of the space. And it also focuses on policy type interventions. How can you create spaces for mindful eating? How can you specify materials and finishes and paints and floorings and adhesives that are all going to positively contribute to the indoor environmental air quality of the space? And then how can you use policies that govern the space? So everything that the organization can do to ensure appropriate levels of mental health and support. Because when we think about health, we're really truly thinking about the complete sense of mental, physical, and emotional well-being, and not just the absence of disease or the avoidance of COVID in this here moment. So we track our growth through the projects that we've got around the world. When I joined the organization about 2.5 years ago, we were in 27 countries, about 500,000 square feet, 500 million square feet, and less than 1,000 projects in total. Since March, we've been introducing about 1 million square feet a day across all different sectors, across all different building types. And we've really seen the focus largely go to performance verified, evidence-based strategies to keep people feeling healthy and safe. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Jennifer to talk a little bit more about her experience with WELL.
Thank you very much, Angela. You make my life easy. Okay, the floor is yours. Jennifer?
Can you all see my screen? Can you all see my screen?
We see, yeah, evidence-based approach to help super space.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Well, again, thank you all to everyone who's here today and for having me as part of this panel. This is a really fun group of people to be with. And so as Maggie mentioned, my name's Jen, and I'm the president and CEO of A Sustainable Production, also known as ASAP. And we create healthy places for the people and planet. And so I'm a WELL faculty, I'm a lead fellow, and a whole bunch of other credentials that I'm not going to bore you with. But I've been in sustainability and wellness for almost 15 years at this point, and I've been really lucky that I've been with Well since the beginning. So since before that timeline even started, before IWBI existed and before Well was publicly released to the market, I was one of those first provisional Well APs and Well APs and Well faculty in the world. So before the pandemic, I was traveling around the world and teaching about Well and the Well portfolio program that Angela mentioned, because ASAP is one of the global expert and leaders in bringing sustainability and wellness to the built environment at scale. So we really do love working with portfolios and large organizations. So we also do like to work with single projects of all size and building types, as Angela mentioned. We have a tendency to work on the first of those typologies and get to figure out what that looks like, which is really fun for us. And we have spent a great deal of time working on multifamily residential as well. So when COVID hit in March, our clients came running to us, asking us what to do. And we had been telling them, of course, for the last decade that the places where they lived, worked, played, and learned mattered. And so now they wanted us to have answers and solutions. And so we went looking for them as well. And there was a lot of information out there, and quite frankly, a lot of conflicting information at that. So for us, it was hard to navigate at first, honestly. You know, there was the CDC and WHO and Fauci and state directives and local directives, and they were constantly changing and sometimes even conflicting. And so in all of our research and learning, everything kept leading us back to IWBI for answers that we knew we could trust. And so I think a lot of people kept finding their way to IWBI when they were looking for a solution. So as our clients came to us, we started working really closely with IWBI to better provide our clients with answers that they could trust. So if you look at this slide, in March of 2020, IWBI created the IWBI Task Force on COVID-19 and other respiratory infections. And the task force was focused on prevention and preparedness and resiliency and recovery. And it consisted of the confluence of almost 600 diverse global participants, as you can see. I was one of those almost 600 people. It was a lot of fun to be a part of. And I think that the global institutional knowledge, coupled with the extensive insights they received from the various advisories, truly informed the creation of a robust health rating system so that you could really address COVID-19 now and post-COVID-19 environments. And so I think the Well Health Safety Rating was the answer that my owners and developers, multifamily and retailers were demanding, and that they weren't really alone. So the Well Health Safety Rating for facilities and operations management was created, and I think has been a phenomenal solution in the market. And it's an evidence-based third-party verified rating. And it focuses on a few areas, and those are operational policies, maintenance protocols, emergency plans, and stakeholder education and engagement. And so the health safety rating is a seal that is a way to communicate and build confidence with your employees, your customers, your clients, residents, students, and other building occupants entering or re-entering spaces during or post-COVID. So there's a lot more that I could share about the Well Health Safety Rating and all of these systems and what our clients are doing. So I will do that during the panel. But much like what Ben said, I think for us, one of the really important things that we've been focused on is intersectional environmentalism, a term coined by Leah Thomas, and really looking at people and planet and equity, social justice. So I'm looking forward to an exciting panel and some thought-provoking conversations, I'm sure. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So here we have, you can see, so we there's an issue, we say, there's an impact of building it on health, and we have standards that are developed. We have systems, scoring system. I just wanted to get a little bit, Bill gave us really kind of some concrete examples. I would like just, if, we could, maybe Angela, give us a couple of concrete examples of how the Well standards kind of, what do we mean by health here? And a couple of examples of some of the metrics.
Certainly. So when we define health, we talk about health in the complete sense of the word. So mental health strategies, physical health, social connectedness. So when you look at that kind of 10 concept framework that exists within the Wellbuilding Standard, we're looking at tracking things like the air quality, for the benefit of human cognitive performance. We're looking at things like the water quality for human consumption. We're looking at things like the light levels that people are exposed to. I can see the lights kind of creeping in and, in the space that I'm sitting in right now, but we talk about how that affects your circadian rhythm and how it impacts your ability to sleep at night and be awake and be focused throughout the day. We look at things like the acoustics, because you can't turn off your ears. And when you look at people's top complaints across the workplace, it's a noisy environment that's distracting them from getting their work done. When you think about things like mental health or social well-being, we start to use strategies through nudge architecture. So in the nourishment concept, for example, one of the provisions in Well is that people have space to eat away from the space where they work, so that they can make connections with coworkers or colleagues or wherever you're applying this standard. They have a mindful space to eat, because we know that the evidence shows when you eat in front of a screen, whether it's your computer screen or your TV screen or whatever screen you're looking at, you're far more likely to overeat and report being less satisfied with your food. So when trying to address things like lack of physical activity, the obesity epidemic that's going worldwide at this rate, we're trying to come up with strategies where the building can nudge a healthy behavior, but also the organization can enact policies to get people moving, to have people take the stairs if they're able, to avoid to start doing things like active commuting or celebrating the sense of culture or the place where this building exists, whether it's a workplace or a community center or what have you, really to address health in that holistic perspective.
Right, so it's a holistic perspective of health, and it includes some of the design structure, but also some of the kind of organizational structure on how kind of an organization, a company can look at this. So this is mostly about the commercial space, right? So I wanted to ask Bill, from a home, a residential perspective, what are the things that you can do to improve your health? So just a couple of examples, so to get a little bit more concrete.
Yes, so 40% of our users are renters, and we think about transportable, portable, and affordable solutions as opposed to, the first step would be ventilation, but if you can't get ventilation, at least in Southern California, we can open windows, we can lease, or we can buy HEPA filtration. The most Hayward Score users change what we call their chemical behavior. They take chemicals that they're storing in their house and get them out of the house or into the garage, seal the garage. If there's a dampness moisture problem, that's another issue. Using a HEPA vacuum is really critical. Dust is the carrier of a great deal of environmental pollutants, and trying to reduce the dust load in a house. Those are a few quick ones.
Okay, so I think that's helpful to kind of understand what can be done. So there's this other question. So here we're talking about the, kind of the health space. And I wanted to ask Ben about the link between the environment and health. So what about the LEED standard? Now we have we had LEED. How do they connect? Is there any are you guys competing? Is there competition? Or is there any development from the LEED standard towards, kind of also health? Ben, can you talk about this?
Sure. And so, first of all, from where I sit, there's no competition. The amount of buildings and spaces that are not healthy or sustainable versus those that are is an incredibly huge gap. And this is one of the things that I think has really hurt us as a movement over the past decade, is that we've sort of fragmented and really got into these discussions about who's going far enough here or there, when we've got 90% of the real estate that's out there that needs so much work to get to a place where we're just even on the course we need to be to really fight climate change and create healthy space. So I think that needs to be said. Secondly, when it comes to LEED, LEED has developed these pilot credits. So the credits can be used across different versions of LEED. And these pilot credits were developed directly as a result from the pandemic, and looking at how folks could gain credits for their LEED certification while addressing issues arising from the pandemic at the same time. So, and I talked about some of those earlier, but they relate really to issues around building water quality, how you're cleaning your spaces, ultimately indoor air quality, which is really important, whether it's outdoor air, ventilation, or filtration. I think that is, as I said earlier, one of the benefits that's come out of this experience is people are really looking at that in different ways. And also when it comes to really looking at social equity, and this is something I think LEED has really done a good job at over the last year, is really starting to pivot more to looking at how are we using our real estate as a tool when it comes to equity. And I'm happy to see that development, and I hope that continues, because we need to be having that conversation more and more, and at least raising that awareness with folks. And one of the things we need to think about too, as we move to address, the impacts of the pandemic in our buildings, is how do we maintain the course around things like energy efficiency or green cleaning. When we're putting new types of filters in our building or changing the dynamics, we're actually driving up oftentimes the energy use for those buildings. So we need to just be conscious of that and figure out how do we offset that, either through demand response or flexibility in how we use our space. And then green cleaning has been a real issue for us here locally over this past year. I think there's a fear to continue green cleaning practices that's actually not really well founded, and that they don't work well in fighting COVID. And we've tried to work hard to dispel that myth, because, to Bill's point about chemical use and other things, there's a reason we have green cleaning practices, is because it's about the health of people and the fumes that people are inhaling in their spaces. And so we need to try to maintain the course there.
And in the Hayward Score users, we've seen a significant shift to green cleaning supplies from traditional since COVID hit.
That's great news. That's great news. And I've actually heard challenges now with sourcing, the right types of chemicals has been a really big challenge lately, especially for green cleaning.
So some of the initial work on LEED was looking at potential increase in productivity of people living in green buildings. And it might have been because of some of the features of LEED had a health connection, right? You're saying just different type of material, different type of ventilation. So I think, it seems like there are some potential overlaps between these two standards, right?
If I could speak to that for a moment too, it's so funny, as a society, we tend to just focus on one metric, right, which is our direct cost. And I've seen some great tools developed recently. JLL actually has a great tool called the 330-300 tool. And the general principle is that your cost to your real estate might be roughly $3 your operating expenses might be roughly $3 a square foot for your space. Your real estate cost may be roughly $30 a square foot per year for your space, but the cost to your people in your space is roughly $300 a square foot. And using this tool, and I've used it with various folks, and it's just one example. I just think that the ones that have done a great job of actually using it we look so much like, what are we paying for our space? What are we spending to run that space? When really what ultimately affects what you're spending on your space is the productivity of your employees in that space, how many sick days they're taking on average a year. These things actually impact what's the revenue you're creating out of that space and its true cost. Employee retention is another big one too. Employees are upwards of 30% more likely to stay with a company when they have healthier space, and they may not even know why. They just feel better being at work than they are versus otherwise. And so there's a real cost here. And I think the real challenge for us is actually, how do we shift the lens that we look at real estate through? How do we shift that so we're looking more at the true costs of the sustainability of that space, whether it's long-term operating costs or occupant health? We're just not factoring those metrics into how we evaluate our real estate. And that's the shift we need to see in the market.
Right. So we have the shift. So I agree with you, looking at the people first, but also now looking at, your own space as a company versus your people working from their home. So it's kind of a change here on how we see, this enormous commercial real estate, maybe, with people occupying and working from home. So how does that work also in terms of, that's also an interesting perspective that makes maybe kind of also having healthy homes more important. So there's this relationship with the sustainability side. You're saying sometimes it works in the same direction, sometimes it could work in a different direction. When you're saying, you increase your purification of the air and then you increase electricity use. So that's something that to be mindful of. The other part to equity, and I wanted to kind of move to that question that you raised, and as Jennifer, she used that term a little complicated, intersectional, you went fast, intersectional environmentalism. What is it? And how does kind of the Well Standard help with this equity, equity piece? I mean, is it something that only rich people can afford? How do we share this so that everybody can live in healthier buildings?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that. Well used to have a tagline back in the day that well was not just healthy for the wealthy. And they've done a lot of things over the years to really prove that and stand behind that. And, I think we previously saw health and wellness as a luxury or a benefit. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that health and wellness is no longer a luxury, but rather a necessity for all people. And I think it's also taught us that equity matters because really, we're only going to be safe as the most vulnerable communities in our communities are, and only as healthy as those people are. So intersectional environmentalism, I've gotten better at saying it over time. I stumbled across this term in this organization led by Leah Thomas, Green Girl Leah, if you want to look her up online. And what it is it's really like how I feel we've been living as a company, how I've lived as a person, where I've always holistically looked at the health of the planet and the health of the people, but fighting for equity and social justice. And when I look at, who we are, our mission, our vision, our values, that's really what we built our company on. And so to find a phrase that really takes the confluence of those three things represents, I think, exactly what's needed right now in society and globally. And I think that Well has addressed social equity so well. And they've done this in numerous ways. They do have not to burst Angela's, but they have her announcement, but they do have a health equity advisory that's starting to address health equity. So I think that's really exciting. This morning I was on a community advisory call and we were looking at all of the equity features that we had included already as beta features under the new V2. So there's a lot that's being done there, as well as the discounts that Well gives. They give a 35% discount, whether it's based on the location of where your building's located, or whether you are a nonprofit, a school, a government entity, a small business, which was added recently. So there's a lot of discounts that they really give to make it so it's not just healthy for the wealthy, to really get this out there. I think the other thing they do really well is it's transparent. They put it out there for free. You can download all of the information, whether it's the reference guides, whether you want to use Well online, and it makes it really accessible. You don't have to do an actual certification, but it gives you the ability to start learning and dip your toe and kind of get, ready so that hopefully you'll get excited and want to move forward and do a health safety rating or Well certification or Well portfolio.
So just to go back to this, we have one question in the chat that relates to that, and that's maybe to Angela. What is the premium? I mean, if you want to get certification, what's the premium you have to pay? And you're saying, Jennifer, there are ways to kind of mitigate that, but what is it? So if people are thinking about this.
Yeah. So Jen Lowe. Oh, Angela, I don't know if you wanted me to address Jen's really quick, Jen Lowe's really quick. I was just going to talk to our clients in how they're justifying this. We're actually turning in 50 health safety ratings today. So we're super excited about that. That's for a portfolio. And what we found was that our clients who were sustainability wellness people didn't necessarily have budgets for Well and Well portfolio and the testing that went with Well certification. And suddenly when COVID hit, the real estate division had a whole new budget for COVID that allowed them to come running to us and say, we want to do Well certification. We want everything certified. We need testing and verification, and we're putting in sensors and all of these things. So for our clients, if you're doing a Well certification, you don't have to pay for the health safety rating. So what we've seen is a lot of our clients are doing both. They're doing the health safety rating and Well certification, or Well portfolio. Again, there's no cost to do the health safety rating if you're doing Well portfolio. So I'll turn that over to Angela, since this is, yeah, go ahead.
So basically, it's just saying that with the COVID situation, and there's one question in the chat about this. So you've seen an increase because of the relationship with the two. And
absolutely. Yeah, and the idea behind the health safety rating is really to help organizations instill that confidence that it's safe to return, and it's a policy review. So it's meant to be done at scale. For a single location, it is $4,200 a building. But when you start to look at how these updated cleaning policies work, or how your emergency preparedness plans or your business continuity plans apply at scale, really what you're paying for is one set of documentation review, which is completed by our third-party GBCI in about 8 to 10 business days. And it can be as little as $200 a location when you start to scale this across entire portfolios. We've seen about 200 organizations adopt this program since its launch at the end of July, across 7,000 locations globally. And it's something that, you know, Jen mentioned, people wanted the COVID-free sticker. They wanted that indication that it's going to be okay to return. And this is where we can meet the market and say, you know, we can't give you a COVID-free sticker. That's not really how this pandemic works. But we can address the main ways that things are transmitted through air quality.
Out of curiosity, what are some of the things that people can, that's actually help indoor, to avoid COVID indoor? What are the things that you suggest?
Yeah, so there's things like updating the cleaning and sanitization procedures. So that covers everything from strategies around hand washing, displaying appropriate signage, having the right soap and HEPA filtered hand dryers or hand towels, whatever the situation is. So making sure that that's set up to be successful. To what type of cleaning products are you specifying? There's no reason to go out and clear the shelves of all bleach, right? Hand soap is highly effective right now. So making sure that you're using environmentally friendly and healthy cleaning products. You're updating your frequency of cleaning. So that's everything that you'd find in that cleaning and sanitization bucket. Then there's things like health services resources. So what type of support are you giving people who are working remotely, who need to come back and work on site? What is the business continuity plan? What is the plan in case there is another outbreak like we're experiencing now and organizations are forced to shut down again or send people back to working remotely? So thinking through those types of things. Then looking at things like the air quality and the water quality, there's a large concern around buildings that have been stagnant for all of these months, doing a proper, having a proper Legionella plan in place so that they do a flush of the building's water system to make sure that we're not walking into another public health concern after leaving a building empty for months and months and months. And then the last kind of main category and area that the health safety rating focuses on is on that education piece. So how are you communicating what you've done to the people who are going to be coming back to this space? How are they going to be sure that they're confident in the policies and protocols that you have in place to feel good about going inside?
So that's really interesting. And I know Bill wants to comment on that too. So, there's the question, and, Bill, I'll let you just, in a second, but also I want to follow up on the fact that, some of these standards and, these practices during COVID are important, but a lot of this is for new buildings. So what you do when you are already in the existing building, what can you do is also important. Lead at this, lead the new building and lead for existing buildings. So what happens when you're already in place? Bill,
I think the big question, we're doing a ton of work with the schools of environmental engineering, particularly out of Colorado, but when would indoor exposures be about equivalent to outdoor? Since we can go to outdoor restaurants, we know that's relatively safe. Cleaning and masks are critical, but ventilation is simply a must. And that's really, we now understand that if we can get to around 6 air changes per hour indoor, which is quite high with energy penalty, creates a fairly safe environment. But we can offset that with cheap HEPA filters and create an equivalent. So at least in California and a lot of the country, you can even do it with box fans, $25 box fans, moving air through the house, being aware in a shop, in a home that I can feel air movement. I know air is moving because it's indoor exposures where the highest risks are. So to know from a social equity standpoint, we can do it with box fans, at least in many climates. We can do it with some level of ventilation. We can do it with HEPA filtration that we can buy at the store. That's the next frontier, and you're reading about it in the papers as we talk about Thanksgiving gatherings and being home. The focus was schools, now it's restaurant opening, and the next will be homes.
Right. So to go back to so that's comment during for the COVID, but to go back to these, what do you do for existing buildings? I mean, are you thinking about this for the Well Standard and Bill at the home level? What can be done?
I think the most important thing is to find a way to pair a institutional payor who gets it in terms of an insurance company, health insurance. So if we think about the veterans community, 18 million veterans, the government pays the bill. We can demonstrate that fixing the house is cheaper than continuing to pay the healthcare bill. Fortune 500 companies are self-insured. They can see that same compelling argument. And really, we need to bring a couple players to the table to get to the 130 million homes in 10 years.
Yeah, that goes back to Ben's kind of measurement and calculation of how do you calculate the costs, right, and the benefits of certification is a specific time, but what are the benefits associated with this? And we don't really measure them actually. Maybe just insurance would be the one. So I just wanted to kind of to give the panel. We just have like 3 minutes. If there's one last important thing you want to say, you have like 30 seconds. So. Ben?
Sure, and I just wanted to touch on Bill's point. I mean, I think we need to rethink really how we align, responsibility, liability, and benefits for this whole situation. You think about all of our workforce, or not all of it, but at least those in relatively office-based jobs moving to work from home, and now the employers have this great opportunity to maybe extend that workplace into the home. How are they helping that health of folks that are there? And to Bill's point, that could create financing mechanisms, that could create insurance benefits. There's a whole thing there we should think about. And so anyway, for my closing sort of comment, I would just leave you with, take advantage of this moment, use this as a moment to increase the health of the space around you. We're in this decade here of the fight against climate change. And so we really need to rethink our models a little bit. And, that is the positive, the upside of this pandemic. We're all experiencing change. Let's make sure we shift this change in a positive direction in a collaborative way to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Angela?
As the resident ergonomist on the line, I would be remiss not to talk about Well's new beta feature that focuses on the ergonomic setup of your home office. So promoting active design as much as you can. I hope for those of you who have been listening today that you've gotten out of your seat, you've stretched, you've gotten some sunshine. So move your bodies, it's important, and just stay in touch. I love these questions.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Jennifer?
Yeah, I guess if there's something that I want to leave you with, I think first it's to remember that if COVID has taught us one thing, it's that we can't survive without a sustainable planet, healthy people, and equity with social justice. I think also we're only as healthy and safe as the most vulnerable of our populations. And then last, I think really just that sustainability, health and wellness, and equity are no longer luxuries, but they're necessities for the continued health and existence of both people and planet.
Thank you, Jennifer. Bill?
My words of encouragement from Hayward Score, 60% of people get a score, take actions, and then report symptoms go away. So the point I want to make is each little action makes the home healthier, take them. And the second point is, as home is the workplace, if you're a corporation, you can improve your team's productivity and your family's, your employees' well-being by helping them fix their homes.
Thank you very much. We're just right, finishing on time. Thank you so much. It was really a super exciting panel. Stay tuned for more information on both the Ziman Center website and the Impact at Anderson website. We are also doing research in this area, and so we'd love to kind of keep in touch with all of you, and have a wonderful weekend, and take care, stay safe. Bye.